Welcome everyone to a new episode of One Man on Mars devlog. Today we're gonna have a look at a time-lapse video of the illustration process of the spider illustration. So without further ado, let's start this. And every illustration starts with a sketch. So normally I have an idea in my head, and I just want to kind of lay this idea down as quick as possible. So I do a few rough sketches most of the times, and in this case I had a pretty good idea of the illustration, how it should look. So I think the first sketch is the one I took, more or less. So yeah, you see me kind of rearranging the three most important elements: the spider, the ghost, and Leif. And after having a very rough sketch, I'm trying to kind of clean up the sketch to make sure everything will be right in the end. But the most important thing is lighting. So this is then the next step after having kind of cleared the sketch version. I'm just gonna add values into the illustration to make sure the scene is lit in an interesting way. So often I kind of try different versions, light coming from the side or from top or whatever. And in this case I decided to have sort of a top light. And you can see that on the shadow below the spider. Although the lighting situation is quite difficult because the spider is kind of illuminating the scene as well. And already added the environment. Next thing is kind of starting already with colors. So I added the in-game version of the spider to the top right of the image to kind of have reference for the colors. So, and yeah, as you can see, I almost always use the lasso tool. It's kind of to kind of make sure I get a very clean edge, and it's kind of it's very typical to all the in-game art. So try to use that for the illustration or the marketing art as well. And already you have quite a good idea where the spider is going. So I want to make sure that the environment goes into the right direction as well. I'm adding just very quickly the background of the game, so it's the same background as in game, which kind of helps speeding up the process here. And now try to clean up and answer a few questions the sketch of Leif still has or poses. And you see me fiddling around quite a bit with the pose or the sketch of Leif, and it will not be the last versions. I did Leif, I don't know, 3-4 times in this illustration until I was happy. So here I'm just adding a reference again to get a better idea of the proportions of Leif, and kind of sketching it out a bit and see if it's working. And I was pretty happy with the pose, so I started kind of coloring in all the cloth and his gear, the face and that. So I'm just gonna always pick the colors from the reference, and then manipulating the colors afterwards, so kind of that they fit into the scene. And here I'm just adding more stuff to the environment. I'm also reusing the plants from the in-game scene and put them just into the scene, just to create a coherent look again on this. But I will revisit Leif quite soon again, because I was not happy having him that passive in the scene, just viewing him from the back, standing there having no reaction to the spider whatsoever. I mean, the spider's kind of huge and attacking him. So yeah, you can see trying around different poses, a more dynamic pose, but was not happy with that. So I thought maybe it would be cool if Leif is even running. So this is what he does a lot in the game. So I thought, well, just try a running pose. And I thought, well, that's a good idea, and I'm just gonna sketch out and try to answer as many open questions as early as possible. And actually, I was not sure about ghosts in the scene for quite a long time, so I just let them out for quite a while. But the pose was very difficult, to be honest, so I had struggled quite a few times and was not happy how it looks. Just didn't really feel dynamic, so I actually used just SketchMe. It's an online tool to just pose 3D figures, which is very, very helpful. So just kind of repost the same pose, and now I can use it as an overlay. So I was not too far off from what I actually wanted, and the 3D model just helped me kind of cleaning this up and getting a secure idea of how it should really look like in a 3D space. Having this base for Leif, yeah, I'm just gonna repeat the process I already did once for this illustration, and color his cloth and his gear again. But this time, yeah, I took a lot more time and effort to kind of clean up everything until I was happy. So this is kind of the flat version. Now I'm adding the first shadow past, and on top you can see these are kind of the three colors I use for shadow, and the two for the light, the yellow and the blue for the lighting. So I'm just gonna take the colors and overlay them over the colors that are already there, the base colors. And here again I'm using a reference to answer a few open questions. Drawing heads from the backside is not something that I do very often, so yeah, Google is my friend, and just gonna look for references and yeah, have just a much better idea how stuff looks. And now there are a ton of details that I had just to get the look of Leif right, and especially fur kind of takes a while. And in the end, Leif is not a very complicated character, but still, if you kind of do him high res, it just takes a while to get to look right. And it's also important that he's recognizable, so it's very easy to kind of miss proportions, or yeah, most often the proportions are the biggest issues that I have. And then he doesn't look like Leif. He's maybe too big or too masculine or something like that. Yeah, now I think I've finished the shadow path, so I'm adding the blue, the fill lights from the sky, and yeah, make sure that it kind of fits into the scene. And I'm already adding first rim lights coming from the spider. This also helps kind of separating Leif from the darker background, so it helps the readability of the main figure. And yeah, another thing that kind of is always a challenge are hands. I think a lot of artists have issues with hands. I mean, you have to draw hands just very, very often to feel comfortable about drawing hands, and then just don't do that. So what I normally do is then just making photos of my own hands and use them as references, as you can see here, and then just going in and sketching them out and adding colors and shadow. So the hands are almost like small additional figures to the illustration. So you have not one figure, but you have, well, almost 3 figures in one. So it just takes a while until they feel right, and I always have to be careful to not add too many details, because it's such a small thing in the image, and it would look weird if they look almost realistic and the rest is very stylized. So it's important to kind of keep the balance there as well. Alright, and now the hammer. The hammer is very important. It's kind of the signature weapon of Leif. As you might know, he would love to be a warrior, having a mighty sword and stuff like that, but his dad wants him to be a blacksmith, and so he can't keep him close to him, and he doesn't want Leif to go out and put himself into dangerous situations. So yeah, he has to be a blacksmith and forge weapons and not swing them. Yeah, that's why he's carrying a hammer, but in the game you can switch between a lot of weapons. There are, I think, over 50 weapons that you can choose from: swords, spears, hammers, long swords, short swords, and axes and stuff. So there's a plethora of possibilities when selecting a weapon. But coming back to the illustration, so there's still a lot to do here, a lot of details on the spider, adding the lighting coming from the back of the spider, and adding hair details everywhere. Yeah, it's kind of just what takes a while. I'm not sure about how many times I speed up this process, but yeah, I think all in all it took me, well, let's say around 10 hours or something to do the whole illustration. But it's not over yet, so I'm working on the environment here, adding the very special trees of the broken cave level, and you've seen me before adding some sort of ground fog to yeah, just give it an eerie feeling. As well, in all of my illustrations, I make sure to have a background where the spider is, a midground where the character is, and a foreground just to give the illustration depth, and that's kind of what I did here as well. And finally Ghost is entering the scene, so after having sketched him out, and just adding color to his body, and make sure that the deformations kind of make him look in movement. Ghost is quite a thankful character to illustrate because it's such a simple character. The only thing that you have to make sure is that the curves are clean and perfect. Don't really want to use edges on him too much, so that's very important, that he looks squishy and soft and kind. And for sure, I don't forget to add the particles behind him. He's a magical creature, so it's important to kind of give him this magical flair. And it also portrays the movement, so it kind of shows where he came from, and also the direction in which Ghost is flying. And here I'm checking the formats. I just do them once in a while, just cutting in and see if it works in a skyscraper format or in a widescreen format as well. Yeah, and so late in the process, I'm just jumping back and forth between different elements, kind of rearranging stuff, trying to well, getting a fresh look on the image and then thinking about what can be done. Sometimes I'll also give the illustration to friends and let them give feedback. It happened here. Jan, the sound designer, gave me very good feedback, so I tried to kind of make the illustration even a bit more dynamic. I kind of zoomed in on Leif or just scaled him up a bit to give him a bit more space, and to try to kind of rotate the few elements in the scene to make it even more dynamic. But we're almost done here, so it's not much left to do, just tuning around the lighting and yeah, just kind of finish off every element of the illustration.